On April 11th, 1986, the FBI would be involved in a shootout with 2 suspects. 8 agents would take part in the shooting, 2 suspects would be killed, 2 FBI agents would be killed. This is the 1986 Miami-Dade Shootout. Before we talk about the shootout, I think it's important we get a little bit of backstory on both of our suspects. Both of them were military veterans, having both served in the Army, specifically as military policemen, before they were both discharged honorably from the U.S. military. Now, before the shootout, neither man had actually had a criminal record. However, William Russell Maddox, our second suspect, was investigated for the murder of his wife, Patricia, and her co-worker, both of whom were found stabbed to death at a hospital in Columbus, Ohio. Both of them had been bound, gagged, and had their throats cut, but Maddox was never charged in those murders. Now, after Maddox's wife had died, he was convinced by Platt to move to Florida, and they actually started a tree trimming service. Maddox would later remarry, but it wouldn't be long before the pair would begin their crime sprees. On October 5th, 1985, Platt and Maddox murdered a 25-year-old named Emilio Briel while he was target shooting. They stole his car and went on to rob several places, like a Wells Fargo armored truck that was servicing a Winn-Dixie supermarket. If you don't know what a Winn-Dixie is, it is a supermarket that is more common in the southern United States, specifically like Florida, Georgia, those kind of areas. Not really common anywhere else in the United States. The pair shot one of the guards in the leg. The guards had returned fire. Neither Platt nor Maddox were wounded, and no money was taken, but the guard did later die from his wounds. So that is murder number 2. Now, they would go on November 8th of the same year to rob the Professional Savings Bank in Miami, taking $41,469 that had been delivered that morning. So not a bad haul for one robbery, but remember, now they've got multiple robberies and at least 2 murders at this point on their record. It would appear that that $41,000, which if split equally, would be roughly $20,000 apiece. Apparently that held them off for a little while, because it wasn't until January 10th of 1986 that they initiated another robbery by attacking a Brinks armored car as the guard opened the back door of the truck. Now, they shot the guard in the back with a shotgun, and then shot him twice more with what was described by witnesses on scene as an AR-15 style rifle. After that, they escaped with approximately $54,000 in the Chevy that they had stolen from Emilio Briel. So they're still using his car pretty much 3 months after they had killed him. Now, a witness had followed them and watched them switch to a Ford F-150, but then lost them. The guard survived the shooting, but had over 100 shotgun pellets inside his body, which I can't imagine would feel very good. But this is a man that survived a robbery by 2 men that had already killed 2 people in robberies. So I would consider myself lucky on that note. Next, they robbed Jose Calazo on March 12th as he was target shooting. Now, I've heard read various reports of whether it was the same rock pit that Emilio Briel was target shooting at. Some say yes, some say no. Either way, they shot him and stole his Monte Carlo. And this is where they messed up. This is what got them caught. Calazo survived the shooting, was able to then walk 3 miles and go get medical attention, after which he was able to give them the information on his vehicle, which is ultimately what got them caught. 1 week after they had robbed him, on March 19th, 1986, they robbed a Barnett Bank branch. Now, this was the same bank that they had robbed the Brinks armored car at a few months earlier. This time they only escaped with a little over $8,000. And then they fled in Mr. Collazo's vehicle once again. Now it's here that we pick up the story with the FBI. A team of FBI agents, there were 14 in total, with 11 cars, led by Special Agent Gordon McNeil, had assembled at Home Depot to search for the stolen car. They didn't know the suspects' identities, but based upon the pattern they had began, they suspected they would be robbing another armored car or bank in the area. So they were doing a stakeout. Of the 14 FBI agents, only 8 of them would actually be involved in the shootout. The other 6 would not. At approximately 9:30 that morning, Agents Grogan and Dove spotted their vehicle, and the stakeout cars began to follow them and conduct a traffic stop. The traffic stop was initiated on 82nd Avenue, and after the traffic stop was initiated, there was a collision. They rammed their cars, basically. After the cars made contact, the suspect car was pinned into a tree, between a tree and the FBI's vehicles. Now, most of the agents actually had Smith & Wesson revolvers, either 38 Specials or 357 Magnums. 2 of them had Remington 870 shotguns, and 3 had Smith & Wesson Model 459 9mm handguns, specifically semi-automatics. Of course, this being 1986, most law enforcement at this time still used revolvers. There wasn't a lot of trust yet at least in the law enforcement field of semi-automatic handguns. Most preferred to still use revolvers. So there has been some speculation as to how the shootout would have gone had all of them been armed with semi-automatic handguns instead of revolvers. But most of the conclusions seem to be it probably would have gone about the same way, and you'll see why here in a minute. Now, the initial collision between the suspect vehicle and the FBI vehicles caused the suspects to be forced off the road. Now, one of the FBI agents had pulled out his service revolver and placed it on the seat, but because of the collision, his weapon was sent flying. Whether it was out the door or to the floor, the reports on that vary. Either way, he now has no service revolver. At this point, Platt, who was in the passenger seat, brought up a Ruger Mini 14 and began to fire at the lead vehicle. Another FBI agent had lost his revolver as well during the initial collision, but did have a backup revolver that he was able to deploy and begin firing. Now, FBI agent Ben Grogan landed what most people assumed to be the first hit of the gunfight, shooting Maddox in the forearm as he leaned out of the Monte Carlo to fire his shotgun. Now, at this point, one FBI agent is wounded by Maddox with a shotgun blast, and then McNeil starts firing. Special Agent McNeil, the lead investigator, starts firing over the hood of the car, but is wounded by return fire. Platt then turns his rifle to another FBI agent who's running across the street trying to join in the fight. That agent is hit in the left forearm, which causes a massive wound to the forearm. At that point, that FBI agent is now out of the fight. So at this point, Maddox comes out to shoot again, fires one round, hitting a car, and then is promptly shot in the forearm. Special Agent McNeil then begins firing again and fires 6 shots with his revolver. 2 of these would hit Maddox in the head and neck, at which point he's knocked unconscious and does not come back into the story until the very end. McNeil then gets shot in the hand by Platt, and then he's out of the fight too. So Platt goes to get out of the car through the window, at which point Agent Dove fires a round, which is known as the shot heard around the world, where the round went through his arm, into his chest cavity, perforates his lung, and stops an inch from his heart. Afterward, it would kind of be concluded that one of his blood vessels was hit, and that this wound is what caused him to die eventually. While it was a deadly shot, it didn't immediately stop him from continuing what he was doing. He then climbs across the hood of another car, and as he does that, he's shot again twice, both shots again from Dove. So he hides behind the fender of the car, starts shooting again, and is shot a 4th time when returning fire at the FBI agents. This one hits him in the forearm and causes him to drop his revolver. He's then shot a 5th time, stopping below. The round enters, stops below his shoulder blade. Apparently this one's not serious enough to stop him either. At which point he picks up his Mini 14 again and shoots more rounds, hitting one FBI agent in the shoulder and hitting Agent McNeil in the neck. I feel really bad for McNeil at this point. He has been shot a lot. McNeil is then down completely out of the fight entirely. Then Platt ends up hitting Dove's 9mm pistol, which breaks it, which is unfortunate because at this point I'm unsure if Dove can actually miss with how many rounds he's hit Platt with. At this point, both Grogan and Dove were trying to fix Dove's weapon when Platt comes around the car. They unfortunately did not see him coming around the car, and Platt kills Grogan with a single shot to the chest. He also shoots FBI agent Hanlon and then kills Dove with 2 shots to the head. He then gets into another car and attempts to flee. Now at this point, you remember that FBI agent that was shot in the forearm? He comes back into the story in a big way. He gets his shotgun and using one arm starts shooting, hitting Platt in his feet. At this point, Maddox has apparently woken up from his little nap and decides to try and escape again. Now, the FBI agent fires 4 more rounds, does not hit anybody. At this point, the police, the city police had shown up, at which point they start assisting. One of them, Martin Heckman, goes and covers McNeil's body with his own, and Rick Fry starts assisting Hanlon. Remember, Hanlon has just been shot in the groin. Very bad day for him. Now at this point, what happens next is kind of up for debate. A civilian says that Platt left the car, walked about 20 feet, and started shooting at the FBI again. One of the FBI agents, the one being fired at, says he does not remember that happening. Officer Heckman does not remember seeing Platt leave the car either. And then 2 more FBI agents from the other side of the street said they did not see him leave the car either. At this point, I would assume he didn't, but it's, again, still up for debate. It is known for certain that he did end up pulling out another revolver and firing 3 rounds and then attempting to start the car again. At this point, the FBI agent that had fired the shotgun draws a revolver, moves parallel to them, and then starts shooting. He fired 6 rounds, missing the first round. The second one fragments against the window post and just wounds Platt. The third one hits Maddox in the face, but it had fragmented and did not cause a serious injury, really. And then the fourth hits him in the face right next to his eye and severs his spinal cord. Then a fifth, once again, hit him in the face and comes to rest by his spinal column. The sixth shot penetrates Platt's chest and bruises his spinal cord, ending the fight. Now, at this point, we have discussed pretty much every round that has been fired that had some effect. According to the police report, approximately 145 rounds were fired, with very few hits. One agent did not fire any rounds whatsoever because he lost his gun, and only one agent was able to leave the shootout without any injuries whatsoever. At this point, I'm sure the question in your mind is, why did they have just revolvers and only 2 shotguns? As it turns out, the other 6 agents did not show up in time and had more shotguns, M16s, and MP5s. Also, pretty much nobody was wearing body armor. And the 2 that did have body armor were wearing pistol body armor, which did nothing to stop rifle rounds. So this was a shift for law enforcement in terms of the training. This is what really galvanized law enforcement to begin training more for what happens if we get into a shootout like this. Now, I want to take a minute and just pause for a second and talk about Special Agent Ben Grogan and Special Agent Jerry Dove. Grogan fired 9 rounds during the gunfight, and unfortunately he was killed with a single shot to the chest. Jerry Dove fired 20 rounds or more and was killed by 2 shots to the head. And I really wish there was a happy ending, but I feel like even with both suspects being killed, Maddox being killed after being shot 6 times, Platt getting killed after being shot 12 times, I don't feel like with all the death involved that there is really a happy ending to this story. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy this kind of thing, go ahead and subscribe. Plan on posting many more videos. Thank you, and have a good night.